Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Don. And it is a glowing review. And so Ron is the director of special projects at St. Elizabeth University. He has been with the university for 31 years through very many different uh, departments and roles. I've had the pleasure of working with Ron for the last 5 years as he's really taken on the the security uh, role. He's a member of the RISC's community group for Educause, and it's just been a great resource for security, for getting us through headback compliances, SOC 2s, and this is a case study that's very near and dear to our hearts. And so, with that, I'll turn it over to Ron, and I'll let Ron tell you about it.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, I just want to make sure everyone does see the PowerPoint slides this time, right?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, perfect.
Gotcha.
This is a presentation, but if it's interactive, that's great too, about how we handle GLBA compliance here at St. Elizabeth University. What Jeff didn't mention was his first probably week on the job. When I met with him for the first time, I walked into the office with a sheet of paper and said, this is a bunch of regulations that we're going to have to be in compliance with, and we have a couple of years to make sure we are. And that's how we started off with everything. Let me just advance the slides here and see where we are here, though. Okay. Okay, perfect. Let's begin with a little background about us here at St. Elizabeth University. We're 125 years old. We were founded in 1899 by the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth as an all-women's college. We were originally formed as College of St. Elizabeth. We were continuing with our roots as a small liberal arts Catholic college, so we're faith-based. But in 2016, with the pressures of budget and everything and the desire to expand our mission, we went co-ed. And I put our mission over here just so everyone can see it. I'm sure it's probably similar to some of the small institutions. We're a community of learning in the Catholic liberal arts tradition for students of diverse ages, backgrounds, and cultures. We serve the underserved population here. We go, when we educate students to be servant leaders here. So, and that we continue with that idea to date. The IT department here at St. Elizabeth University is very small. We have 10 staff, which combines the IT area and the library combined. Our network operations.
Camera, all Dan's all happy with it.
Oh, good.
We got it working for streaming. I actually called Huddle.
Okay, I'm sorry. Our network operations area is outsourced, which sometimes proves a little challenge because we don't have people here on a day-to-day basis with network operations, but the consulting company that we use is very efficient and responds to our needs really rapidly, which is good. IT special projects, my department, or my area, was formed in 2016. For the first couple of years, I didn't do a lot of security, but with leading up to COVID, everything started to kick off at that point with security, and we really needed to focus more upon it. So my area does cover IT security management as well as a number of other areas, which I consider a potpourri selection of responsibilities, but I'll just focus on the IT security right here since this is what we're talking about. As Jeff said, I'm Ron Loneker, Director IT Special Projects, 31 and a half years here at SCU. It's been a journey over the last 31 and a half years. As Jeff said, I've held multiple roles here, all in IT, but it's given me a very wide eagle's view of the operations of the university because I've worked in so many areas with project management and other activities that I've done. And as Jeff said, I'm co-lead of Educause's Regulated Information Security Compliance, CG. We meet the third Tuesday of the month, each month. So if you are interested in information security compliance, anything coming from the federal government or state governments, we cover all those different areas. So GLBA, HIPAA, PCI compliance, all those different areas where we discuss those. This presentation I'm about to give here is kind of a portion of what I'm going to do next month in May at the Cybersecurity and Privacy Professionals Conference. I'm giving a talk on a small university and GLBA third-party risk management. So I'm going to focus on that with third-party risk management as opposed to what I'm going to talk about here, which is mainly, or just GLBA in general. So I've been working the last 6 years now with, actually it's more 6 years, more than 6 years, with different areas of IT security. I'm a member of the New York, New Jersey Cybersecurity Crimes Task Force, member of New Jersey's New Jersey KIC, which is a part of New Jersey's Department of Homeland Security and Preparedness. We regularly interface with the DHS with federal programs, which I'll talk about as part of this as well. So I try to keep my hands in all the different areas. So FTP safeguard rule. This is really what GLBA last year really focused upon. And we did not initially get a glowing mark when we had the auditors come in and take a look at what we did. In fact, most of what we did, we were partially compliant or not compliant at all on areas. So we really had to ramp up, even though we had the 2 years of preparation. Some of the rule areas were a little difficult to manage, especially being a small university with a limited IT budget to deal with. So the safeguards rule has multiple components. The first one, 16 CFR section 314, subsection 4A, was a designation of a qualified individual. That's probably one of the ones that we had completed. That was me. I was actually designated as our qualified individual to go through this, and that meant I had to really implement an IT security plan for the institution to comply with the safeguards rule. 16 CFR section 314B, subsection L, written documentation of the risks, risk assessment, including how risks are evaluated and categorized. This was something that we were partially compliant with. The auditors came back to us and said we needed to be fully compliant. And I'll talk about exactly how we accomplish that once I go through the rest of the safeguard rules. Everything with a 3 asterisk at the end, we were either partially or non-compliant with. So you can see we had some issues. The next section, design and implementation of required standards or safeguards, I'm sorry, including implementing multi-floor MFA, basically. For individuals, we were partially compliant with that. And I'll talk about how we actually got fully compliant with that. But we were on a process to begin with before everything took place of starting to do MFA here. This actually just pushed us to complete that MFA process. The next safeguard rule, establishment of continuous monitoring processes for information systems or periodic vulnerability assessments and penetration testing. This was a concern for us because it wasn't compliant. We were doing external monitoring, vulnerability scanning, but we weren't doing internal, and we had no continuous monitoring processes that we really had aside from alerts if PRTG alerts if a server went down or a service went down or something like that. So we had to deal with this, and I'll explain how we worked with a couple of different areas to actually get this in place in a second. Implementation of policies and procedures. That was actually complete. One of the areas here that kind of surprised me is that we had to do IT security training. We really weren't doing much IT security training. I had a page on our intranet, which had some videos that I got from the National Cybersecurity Alliance on some areas of IT security, and I posted them there, but we had no effort to attract people who took them. No, and I was concerned about that, but somehow our auditors actually accepted my explanation as it was okay, so we completed that. I expect that in the next year or two, we're going to actually get more compliant with that, though. Next is creation of procedures to periodically assess service providers. And this really has to do with service providers that actually take controlled unclassified information, or PII. It's not all service providers. For example, we have our bookstore is a third-party service provider. We have a connection with Academos, which is our virtual bookstore, and we exchange a file back and forth. There's really nothing in that file that's PII, but that's actually outside of the scope of this for us. Documentation of a formal incident response plan. We actually had to create this one. We were not compliant on this at all. We didn't have anything. We had something that was a small paragraph, but it wasn't anything which we would have considered a plan. Presentation by the qualified individual of the written annual status report, basically of the safeguard rule. We never had to do this, so this was a brand new item, and we weren't compliant with that. So that was easy to do once we actually gone through the safeguard rules, and we were able to actually I was able to put together something for that. So those are the rules and where we stood on them. And like I said, we weren't happy with where we were, so it took a lot of effort to actually get there. So let's just talk about some of the items that we put into place that actually helped us to become compliant. First of all was the risk assessment. We actually had a risk assessment. It covered a number of these areas: the phone system, what to do, how the phone system worked, what the problems were if we had a lost connection, if a phone line went down that was serving the campus. So we had some of this in place, but we weren't all these areas weren't fully fleshed out. So I will show you a page in a second, which shows actually what this risk assessment looks like. The one item on here that was not on the risk assessment was the last one, My Docs Online. My Docs Online is our secure information or document storage site that we use. It's kind of like Box or Dropbox, except it's a little less expensive, and it met our needs. So I had to actually add a risk assessment for that, and we'll talk about that in a second when we talk about multi-factor also. These were other areas that were already in the risk assessment, so we actually were pretty good on all of these areas. But this, we were requested by the auditors to add 4 areas, and they all had to do with either the financial aid area or the National Clearinghouse, Student Clearinghouse. So we had the first one, the COD website, ESI, and the NSLDS. They were all the 3 from financial aid that we had to add. And then we had to do a risk assessment for the National Student Clearinghouse website. Interesting thing about the National Student Clearinghouse website is that when I approached them to talk with them about everything or looked on the website, they were not compliant themselves with multi-factor authentication for the end users. End users themselves could have MFA on to log into the website, but if you exchange information via FTP, if you downloaded information that was not protected by MFA. So they actually, the CISO at the clearinghouse emailed me back and told me by the end of the summer it would be in place, and it was. So we were able to add that MFA. But it was a challenge is working with everybody to make sure that they got their MFA set up for these third-party areas. This is what our risk assessments look like for each of the different pages. You can see this is our internet circuit. We have 2 internet circuits at St. Elizabeth University. We have one from Lightpath and we have one from Crown Castle. They come in from different areas of the university for redundancy. The reason why we did that was we have one part of the campus which has a lot of trees on it. And when the trees limbs fall in the sun in the winter because of snowstorms or ice, it typically would bring down the circuit. By having another circuit on the other coming up from the other part of the campus, we fail over immediately once that disruption occurs. But we had to document this in the risk assessment and explain the threats, which are the falling trees, and also phishing attempts or threats and distributed denial of service attacks on our internet service. Over the last 2 years, we actually got distributed the denial of service protection on both of these lines by our ISPs. So that we pay extra for, but it protects us from that, which is nice. But we actually had to explain all this in the risk assessment. And you have to do this for every single area that you have in your risk assessment. As I said, multi-factor authentication, we're already on a journey to get MFA in place. You can see here in September 2002, we started with a Google Workspace for employees. It was only employees, it wasn't for students. 2 months later, we needed to implement VPN MFA. So we worked with Microsoft to use Entra ID for Microsoft. At that point, it was Azure AD, but it's now Entra ID. So we got that all set up, which was nice. And it was good right before the beginning of Christmas break when people were starting to work from home. So it was helpful. The following May, Institutional Advancement, who did all of our fundraising, actually was using Razor's Edge for its fundraising efforts, and they moved over to Entra ID through Blackbaud as opposed to through us. Our idea was that we eventually wanted to bring Blackbaud Entra ID over to SEU Entra ID so it can maintain the tenant. And if someone left, if we deleted an account or not deleted, inactivated an account, it would activate it in Razor's Edge as well. So that was the whole plan. And then after that, starting in January 2023, the smaller applications that we used and third-party cloud applications, we started to move over to Entra ID. We did have some issues with some applications. Power Campus, our student information system, did not allow for multi-factor. They used the application that they used to actually do MFA was developed for Banner. It wasn't really developed for Power Campus, and we had some security issues with it, so we said we shouldn't implement it there. PowerFade's desktop was, we were informed by PowerFade's desktop was not going to be supported with MFA for desktop. You had to use their cloud application. As we know now, they're not using the cloud application, so I'm not sure as the future goes on with PowerFades what they're going to do about MFA. But as I believe Jeff has probably mentioned, we're moving over to a new SIS, so we won't be using PowerFades anymore over the next 4 months. We'll be gradually migrating over to our Thesis Elements financial aid system. Microsoft Dynamics Great Plains, which we use for our financial system, does not allow multi-factor authentication for the version of Great Plains that we were using. So that was an issue too. And finally, ADP told us that they would not support multi-factor with Entra ID for their HRIS system, which has been a challenge working with them to try to do anything with multi-factor, but we hope over the next couple of months to get that in place. So in terms of monitoring and vulnerability scanning, which was a gap for us, starting in 2019, we signed an agreement with the Department of Homeland Security to do cyber hygiene weekly vulnerability scanning. It comes free of charge by DHS. So if you're not aware of it, you can actually go to CISA.gov and you can sign up for cybersecurity services. And a member of DHS came over to us here and talked with us about the different offerings that they have, one of which was the cyber hygiene service. We also signed up for a free pen test. That was in 2019. We still haven't gotten the free pen test because they classify priorities and they keep reclassifying priorities. So that may come at some point, but we don't have the free pen test yet. But the nice thing about the cybersecurity weekly vulnerability scanning is that they send a weekly report to us, which has all the information about all the ports that they've scanned and what issues that they found. And I'm happy to say for the last, I'd say at least 9-10 months, our weekly vulnerability scanning report shows that we have nothing. We have no problems whatsoever. Everything has been clean for the last at least 9 months, if not more. As part of our vulnerability scanning for outside of the network too, and inside the network and third-party risk management, we added Fortified Data's contract last March. It's their automated cyber GRC platform. And this platform is a really good platform. It allows us to use a Nessus scan week that occurs weekly, and it scans all of our internal IPs and all of our external IPs and gives us a report of all the vulnerabilities that it finds. And then I can cherry pick each of the different areas. So our website is hosted by Modern Campus. I can pull all the Modern Campus IPs and I can send them to Modern Campus and they can remediate. I can send all the items for our extranet over to the college that we work with for our intranet, and then they go ahead and they remediate their issues. So it allows us to do that on a regular basis. And like I said, it does allow for third-party risk management, which is good too. It allows us to see ADP. It allows us to see EAB Navigate that we use. It allows us to see a couple of other third-party providers that we use. And again, I can send them reports as well. In the future, I'd like to add one more offering that DHS offers for us it's brand new actually over the last 9 months, I guess. They're now doing web application scanning, which is done also through Fortified Data, but I feel the more scanning we do from different providers, the better secure we're going to be at that point. One tool may pick up something another tool may not pick up. Okay. Other assessments we had to do. Last year, we had a contract for a pen test. We did a pen test back in 2015 when we had our last cybersecurity insurance through AIG. They gave us a free pen test as part of the process. But once AIG pulled out of the insurance business and we had to get a new cybersecurity insurance provider, they haven't provided pen tests for free. And anyone who's looked into pen tests knows they're really expensive. So last year, as part of this gave us the teeth to say we need to fund the pen test. So we got the pen test done. We remediated from the pen test, and then we had a second test afterwards, which showed that we remediated some of the outstanding issues. Okay. Our third-party cloud providers, again, because of the safeguards rule, we have to assess a regular assessment of the providers. And the initial process we did with third-party vendors, cloud vendors, is that prior to signing a contract, the contract would come in, Jeff would get the contract, but we required a HECVAC form, Higher Education Community Vendor Access Toolkit. If anyone isn't familiar with it, it's a toolkit available through Educause. It's free, and you send it to your third-party provider. And so a lot of the third-party providers have already filled it out, so it's a matter of them sending a copy to you. These days, a lot of the HECVAC forms won't be returned to you without an NDA. So I'm signing more non-disclosure agreements lately to get HECVAC forms, but it allows you from a institution's aspect to take a look at the security that's been set up in place, and you can make a security assessment. We also decided to add SOC 2 forms to the requirements as well. HECVACs are reported by or self-reported by the companies. SOC 2s are third-party evaluations. So if you want to see it from a third party's perspective without any hiding of anything that you might think might be risky, you look at the SOC 2 at that point. SOC 2s also include financial information at sometimes, and our auditors have asked us at times if we can to get financial information from the third-party providers, again, as another way to assess them. We had a develop an incident response plan and the yearly updates to the Board of Trustees, as I said. So the incident response plan, which we had to do from scratch, it basically described the infrastructure of how we have our network set up. And then we had to go through the idea of explaining these different steps in the plan. We had to confirm the security incident occurred. So we leave that up to the application owner. So for example, financial aid, the director of financial aid owns power fades. So they would be responsible to determine whether or not a security incident occurred. And at that point, they go through steps to report it. Then they assess the impact. Does it impact a lot of data? Is it small? Is it something that can be remediated without notification? If not, it's escalated to the information security officer, which would be me. Then depending on the extent of the incident, we have to communicate internally about the incident or externally. The rules say, I believe if it's 500 records or more, we have to report it to the major media. If it's under, I think it's 200, we have to send out notification to the individuals. Don't quote me on that aspect there. I have to look at our plan to actually see the documentation requirements. But we also have to figure out whether or not PII is affected. If it's affected, that kicks in a whole lot of other remote reporting requirements to the FTC, to FSA, to the state, potentially to the FBI. All of that's documented in the incident response plan. And then we have a remediation for non-PII systems, which is a little more simple because it doesn't require us to deal with sensitive data at that point. Okay, these are actions that the auditors asked us to do. We had to update our risk assessment, which I had mentioned. They asked us to enable lockout policies for Power Campus, which we did. We have a lockout policy for Power Campus, which we actually started enforcing. We enabled MFA on FTP accounts once NSC announced that they were ready and available. My Docs Online didn't have an MFA function, but in June of last year or July of last year, they added it. So As soon as they sent out the notification it was available, we cut that over. And like I said, we contracted with Fortified Data last March. We got our penetration test and expanded the incident response plan and expanded details in the information security plan. So we had to do all these for the audit as part of the auditor. Then for anything that we had problems with, we had to write exemptions for, because you can do as much as you can, but if your system can't allow you to do something because it doesn't technically have the ability to do it, you can't do it. So you have to write exemptions with the idea that when FSA gets the document from you, they have to agree with you that, yes, these are exemptions that they agree with, and they'll permit the exemptions to happen. So because MFA was not able to be implemented for Power Campus, I had to write an explanation. The College Board doesn't have MFA available for Power Fades. I put the Microsoft Dynamics Great Plains Entra ID MFA in there. Our records retention and disposal document, which is something we didn't talk about, but they actually evaluated it as part of the auditing process. Your records retention and disposal document is supposed to be updated every 2 years at the minimum. And ours hadn't been updated in 3 years. So our provost had to work with our registrar's area, and they had to actually update that. But it basically states how long things can be retained and what happens afterwards and how we dispose of them. So that was updated and approved by the provost. And then we talked about ADP. The one thing that we weren't able to do, the auditors wanted us to completely lock out VPN access after 5 unsuccessful attempts. That was a problem because when we did that, we were locking out all the students as well. And then we started getting calls all hours of the day from the students. We don't operate help desk 24/7. And some of the staff were being frustrated and some of the faculty were being frustrated as well. So because it caused a hardship on us, we wrote an exemption and the exemption was approved. Okay, that kind of summarizes everything. I know that was a lot of information to throw out at everyone, but if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Yeah, that was a great presentation. Thank you for that.
There is one question in there from Penny.
Oh, okay.
I'll read it out to you, Ron.
Okay.
RE 314 4 annual written report to the board. Does the report need to go to the entire board, or is a committee sufficient? And what does our report look like?
It had to go to the entire board. Let me see. I'll drop this here and see if I can share what I have here. Okay, I can get this more out. Okay. And this is basically what I wrote for the board. I described the GLBA compliance and what it needed to be. And basically, I spelled out each of the different areas of GLBA that you saw in the PowerPoint. And GLBA has some additional sub areas that I didn't talk about, but I spelled them out completely here. And you can see fully implemented here. Let's see. Those are all the exemptions. Actually, because they were fully implemented, it actually says fully implemented for everything. But initially, it said partially or not implemented. But you can see that one section after I put what we had in place and then actions taken. And then I added the section here about all the approved exemptions here, which I kind of just spelled out in the presentation. But you can, let's see. Oh, nope, that's everything there. But this kind of gives you like a little feeder as to the next big thing that we're going to be focusing on. We potentially have to focus, all higher ed is going to have to focus on NIST 800-171 compliance. FSA is supposed to be announcing at some point that all of our information is falling under NIST 800-171. That has over 100 controls you have to have in place, which is a big step from GLBA. But with the new administration, I'm not sure where this falls now. But I did told Jeff I'd say that that's the next big hurdle coming up for us.
Yep. Another question, and I know I know you can answer on this one. Did y'all do anything with data encryption for FTC safeguards? We're
Yeah.
looking at SQL encryption right now and are looking for any advice anyone has.
Yeah, we encrypted our SQL SQL servers, plural. We worked with a third party to actually do that because that is a requirement under the safeguards rule. So as long as it's safe, as long as it's well, there's two components. You have to make sure it's encrypted at rest. So your servers would have to be encrypted. But then the other component is encrypting in transit. And because our third-party providers work with us and we send files back and forth, we use a secure FTP for our connection back and forth with them. And that encrypts at that point.
And I can add to that to say that in order to encrypt, we had to upgrade our Windows environment. We were, I believe, on 2016. We had to move up to Windows 2019. So first we had to upgrade, and then we had to encrypt. So it was a process. Another question. Can you make those slides available, Ron?
Yes, I can.
Great. And then moving along, did you get a Blackboard for IA to use your Entra ID or theirs? And we are actually moving away from Blackboard over the next few months. But Ron, did you answer that one?
Yeah, I actually had conversations with Blackbaud. They said that they could do we could set up our tenant to connect to Blackbaud with Entra ID. But like I said, we never actually got to that point. The plan was to actually do it this year, but the thing is, because that we're going over to thesis, I felt that it's already secure anyway with Blackbaud's Entra ID, and a few more months with them isn't going to really be something we have to worry about doing. There's other Entra ID conversions that we have to do to get off of ADFS.
And do you want to talk about there's another question about Entra ID MFA with ADP?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull the questions too. I'm not seeing. Okay, there I am. The ADP, like I said, ADP told us initially that they didn't support Azure AD because that's the way I originally approached them because it was Azure at the time. Since then, apparently ADP supports Entra ID. There's a document on the ADP website that actually shows that. Or actually, I think it's if you go on your Entra ID instance, I believe somewhere in there on the different third-party connections, they do show that you can do an Entra ID connection with them. We've been trying to coordinate with them to actually get this in place, but you have to be an administrator in order to actually talk with them. I'm not an administrator. Jeff is an administrator, and trying to get a common time that Jeff is available, I'm available, and our IT consultant, network consultants available. We've been missing ADP when they want to do it or talk to us about it. But the plan is to do it fairly soon.
Another question. When you are running risk analysis for GLBA, do you only scope systems that touch student finance, or do you scope all central systems within the organization?
Well, we actually scope the ones that are third-party cloud providers. We're not doing Power Campus because there's no We're not connecting to them. The third party, it's basically third party risk management. So it's, we host our instance of Power Campus here. We do scan all of our Ps throughout the campus as part of our weekly vulnerability scanning. So in that regard, we actually do the scanning, but the third party risk management is only through Fortified Data is really for cloud providers. So like I said, it's ADP, it's Blackbaud, it's Navigate, and I think there's one other one that we actually have in there too. I'm forgetting it off the top of my head.
Maxient?
No, Maxine actually isn't part
No.
of it because they're not.
Okay.
It will be Thesis though. It will be our new portal. Oh, I'm sorry, Marist College, Marist University. It just became a university. Marist University, which hosts our portal, and also Modern Campus, which hosts our website. Those are the ones.
Another question from our co-leader, Don. Can you speak about the sign-up process with DHS? Is it an invasive process? And are you assigned a specific rep? And what does the relationship look like?
Well, we don't really have a current rep that we deal with specifically now. We have an email address, a vulnerability email address that DHS monitors. Now that we're all set up, we don't really have a point of contact. But initially, it was to reach out. You go to that website that I mentioned I have in the slides actually, and you can sign up over there, and they'll reach out to you and set up a time to come to see you. And then at that point, they will take back to DHS any services that you're interested in. They'll send you paperwork that you have to do. The CIO has to sign off on it. But they're going to ask a lot of information in terms of IPs and things like that, because if they're doing vulnerability scanning, they have to know what your IP range is that they're going to be monitoring. If you change IP service providers and get new IP addresses, you can email DHS with the new IP addresses, and they'll make the change for you. You have to have designated point of contact. So it'll be a point of contact. You'll have a technical point of contact at the university or college, and then they'll have another, at least one more point of contact. And then you just work with DHS at that point. It's been very smooth for us, and they've been responsive. And the reports that they email you, they encrypt. So they'll send you a PDF, and initially they'll send you they'll provide you what the encryption key is, and then you use that encryption key to unlock the reports weekly, because it is secure. If you have the vulnerability scanning, then you can sign up for the web app scanning. You can't just sign up for web app scanning. You have to have vulnerability scanning.
Here's I think we'll get caught on this one. Are you doing any tabletop exercises with senior staff or board?
Yeah, we're gonna get caught on that one. No, we're not actually.
Don't worry.
I have information on some things that we could potentially do, but we actually haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
The main thing right now is to be in compliant with everything else,
Yeah.
and then we're growing the information security area as quickly as we can, actually, because, as you know, since COVID, education is one of the big target areas for threat actors, and we have to deal with that.
Absolutely. All right.
Here's a question. Can you talk about our using MFA as exceptions on our local servers for our VPN? And that was a whole process that you developed with Duo. Maybe you could talk about how we were able to use that for exceptions?
That wasn't actually something that was put into GLBA, but it was something that I think the auditors actually asked about that through the annual audit, IT audit that we do. But as some of these regulations are coming up here, locking down the servers with multi-factor is something that is prudent for people to be doing. And also administrator accounts. One thing that we haven't done yet here, but we probably need to look into doing is using some sort of authentication for multi-factor for authenticator accounts, authentication, I'm sorry, administrator accounts. So when someone's logging in as administrator to a local machine, they need to be at a higher level of privilege at that point. That's confirmed that you are the person who you're dealing with. So, or logging in anyway. But we implemented Duo on all of our servers, and there's a small group of people who have tech accounts which access some of the servers, not all of the servers. And it's based on really the principle of least exceptions. So if you need access, you're only going to get access to certain servers that you really need access to. You're not going to have access to all the servers. If you're an applications manager of a server, you're going to have access to it.